Welcome back. I want us to now listen to an interview that was done earlier by Spice FM. They were talking to Nelson Harvey, who is the 49th president of LSK and chairman of Retirement Benefits Authority. The conversation was on Supreme Court ban on lawyers, lawful or unlawful. Let's listen into that.
She went home with her begging bowl full. 25 judges of the High Court, 11 judges of the Court of Appeal, and car loans. To what extent are these three issues going to help us fight corruption? Appropriately so, you said, the executive came out of this meeting with nothing. But that does not mean that we end there. It is incumbent upon the people of Kenya to ensure that there is accountability and independence of the judiciary. There can never be independence without accountability. So first and foremost, the Chief Justice must address the issue of corruption. Not because it was raised by the president, but because it is a big problem that has hindered the administration of justice in this country.
Does going to meet the president indicate in any way that the Chief Justice is not going to deal with corruption or is unwilling to deal with corruption?
No, it is an indicator that she understands that there is a problem. But it doesn't show us how she wants to address the problem. If she was keen on addressing the problem, she would have given us a roadmap, even without the call by the president, even without the demands by some of us in the legal fraternity. There are some of us who have taken to the streets protesting, saying that the independence of the judiciary is being interfered with. No, the independence of the judiciary is not interfered with. We have so far done so much to protect the independence of the judiciary. But what we want now is accountability. And it should not be that she's always woken up into action by third parties. It is incumbent upon her to ensure there is continuous progress in ensuring that every Kenyan has access to justice. Not justice that is available to the highest bidder. Not justice that is encumbered by incompetence, delays in the delivery of judgments, days for hearing that are given 6 months, 2 years away from now. Those are hallmarks of incompetence and corruption. And these are issues that must be addressed by the Chief Justice.
So they needed to be addressed anyway.
Absolutely.
And there's work that needs to be done towards ridding the judiciary of corruption, and it's not going to be done in a day. But now with all of these things that are happening almost simultaneously, with the first call out from the president, the previous calling out of corruption in the, or rather calling out of the judiciary on matters corruption, is justice on trial today in Kenya?
Yes, justice is on trial in Kenya today, and not at the behest of the big man, not at the lamentation of the small man, but on the complaint of everybody. And I must say this, and I'll keep on repeating. The main problem is twofold. One, there is corruption, a situation whereby we have judicial officers who take money to tilt the wheels of justice in favor of a party. And then the second aspect of it is incompetence, which may amount to gross misconduct. We have cases where you have judicial officers who do not render justice in good time, who do not give considered decisions, who do not give reasons as to why they have arrived at their decisions. And this has to be looked at it from that perspective. I have on numerous occasions suggested that we must have a permanent approach to scrutinizing how judicial officers work, with the vetting of judges and magistrates board. I do not know why our friends in the executive and the legislature do not want to take up this role now. We need the vetting of judges and magistrates to be taken at an interval. Some have suggested 5 years, some have suggested 10 years. I think 10 years would be an appropriate time. And I say so, bearing in mind that a judge serves for a period of 70 years. The judges who were recruited last year and the year before, some as young as 40, some as young as 38, we're going to have these people in office for almost 30 years, 40 years. How do we ensure that they are accountable? And if they are not accountable at intervals, then the problem that we've complained about is bound to persist longer than necessary.
But Nelson, they are constantly accountable in the fact that at any time, any person can raise an issue against a specific judicial officer, a judge, at any time. If you feel that a judge is corrupt today, you can take up that matter to the Judicial Service Commission and an investigation should commence immediately. If somebody else feels that the same judge is corrupt tomorrow, they can do the same. So throughout the tenure of a judge, they are accountable. Is that not so? Do we have to have a vetting? What does that vetting do that's different?
Look at the composition of the Judicial Service Commission as it is right now. Tremendous progress was made upon the promulgation of the Constitution, with the effect that the appointees then of the Judicial Service Commission of the President are not the case. The Judicial Service Commission is
They're a minority.
It's representative. It's representative of the legal fraternity. It is representative of the executive. It is a representative of the public.
Yep.
But look at the Judicial Service Commission as it is right now. Are you confident that you can take your complaint to a Judicial Service Commission headed by the Chief Justice against a judge of the Supreme Court, against a judge of the High Court, against a judge of the Court of Appeal? There may be, and I speak this with a lot of information, there may be a lot of vested interests. That is the reason as to why we say the Judicial Service Commission as currently constituted is not competent enough. It does not have the capacity, the wherewithal of ridding this country of corruption.
Maybe just inform the public what the constitution of the Judicial Service Commission.
The Judicial Service Commission is comprised of, first, the Chief Justice,
Right.
a judge of the Supreme Court,
Yep.
a judge of the Court of Appeal, and these two judges of the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court, together with the judge of the High Court, are all elected. The Judicial Service Commission also has two representatives from the Law Society of Kenya,
Right.
one male and one female.
Right.
There is the Attorney General.
Right.
There are two members appointed by, actually 3 members appointed by the President
Right.
to represent the public. So picking from that point, let me go back to the issue that I was addressing. The necessity to have a continuous vetting of judges and magistrates at intervals must exist parallel to the Judicial Service Commission. And I've said the reason as why it is proper to have this parallel mechanism is there are vested interests in the Judicial Service Commission that may require outside intervention and input for us to make progress. And look at the last 5 years. How many complaints against judges and magistrates have been submitted to the Judicial Service Commission and resulted in a recommendation for the formation of a tribunal? Very few.
Are we then imputing some nefarious activities? Because if indeed there were few, are we saying that the decision that was arrived at was wrong or was erroneous?
Which decision, Elder?
The decision not to have a tribunal, because I take the view that by the time an accusation or an issue reaches the Judicial Service Commission, whoever is taking it there has given it thought and they have evidence that they're going to provide before that particular group of individuals.
Okay.
Now, what I want to understand, Nelson, is what is it that makes them incompetent? What is it that makes them unable to fulfill the mandate that I think as a layperson, they ought to fulfill?
Now, I do not want to state that the decisions not to form tribunals when petitions are submitted to the Judicial Service Commission are erroneous. But it's a daunting, arduous task for you to remove a judge through the Judicial Service Commission. As I sit here, I have successfully removed a judge from office through the Judicial Service Commission at a very high cost.
What
at
cost?
A very high cost.
To yourself?
To myself. I was vilified. I was profiled. For about 5 years, I was not able to make progress before the High Court and the Court of Appeal. You will be targeted. You'll be identified. And look, if a distinguished advocate like Ahmed Nasir Abdullahi Senior Counsel can be isolated, identified for an unlawful and constitutional punishment by the Chief Justice, what about those other mere mortals, John, Omondi, and Jerry, who are just about 2 years or 1 year in practice? Moi, I removed a judge at a high cost. That is the more reason as why we need a parallel environment where the public can bring complaints to be reviewed, to be analyzed, and the threshold is not the one that has currently been set by the Chief Justice, where often when you raise a complaint, you are told, no, the complaint borders on the decisional independence of a particular judge. The judge has made a decision. We cannot remove the judge because of that decision, because she or he is permitted to make a mistake within the confine of her decision making. But that is wrong. We've had judges removed because of the decisions they made. Take, for instance, Justice Murugi Mugo, who refused to give an advocate audience that was Zebedi Ongoya, and went further and decided to detain that advocate. She was removed from office for only that reason. One, she failed to give an advocate audience when the advocate appeared before her. And two, she decided to take the law onto her own hands by jailing the advocate who was before her representing a client's interest. And that is the reason why we need the vetting of judges and magistrates, not an institution that has a lot of vested interests in the name of the Judicial Service Commission, that is hell-bent in protecting
their own.
Their own.
So out of the 13 members of the JSC, 7 are judges.
Yes.
Okay. And then we have 3 lawyers. That includes 2 LSK plus the Attorney General.
And the Attorney General.
And the members of the public who may or may not be lawyers.
Yes.
Those 3. So you're saying that these 7 judges will more likely be acting in defense of their own.
Absolutely. Yes.
That's what you're saying.
Yes.
And, so
there's nothing wrong about
that. So we should make them not a majority in the JSC, but make them a minority in the JSC.
No.
Does that help?
The JSC, as currently constituted, is based upon what the Constitution has directed.
And is that what you're raising an issue with?
I don't have a problem with that.
Okay.
There is propriety in having a majority of lawyers and judges in the Judicial Service Commission, because they are better placed to understand the problems that bedevil the legal fraternity. But often, time and history may give individuals who hold office who do not know what their work is. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
Remember, at one point in time, we had 2 representatives in the Judicial Service Commission from the legal fraternity. The male representatives that I'm talking about, Ahmed Nasir Abdullahi and Professor Tom of Gender. These were individuals of gravitas. In fact, often you will think they were the chairs of this Judicial Service Commission. And they were impactful. And for good reason. Because they were there to protect the interests of both the judicial officers and of advocates. But history has the unfortunate outcome of giving you representatives who may not have that gravitas. I don't know whether you know the current male representatives of the male representative of the Law Society to the Judicial Service Commission.
He's the vice chair.
Do you know him?
We met the vice chair.
What is the name of the vice chair?
Masharia.
Masharia. Okay, fine. And as we go for this election of the male representative to the Judicial Service Commission.
Why were you asking that? You didn't know him?
Well, I wanted to know.
Like he's unknown. You feel as though he's unknown.
Do you feel him the same way you felt Ahmed Nasir Abdullahi or Tom Ojenda?
Actually,
we felt Ahmed Nasir because that's the time when judges are being interviewed for jobs.
Yes.
Beyond that,
well, during
during
Ahmed Nasir's tenure, I believe there may have been about 2 or 3 recruitments. During Mashera Njeru's tenure, there have been about 4 recruitments. So the reason as to why you felt the impact of Ahmed Nasir Abdullahi is this. He came in at a point in time where the constitution had just been promulgated.
Yep.
We had the vetting of judges and magistrates.
Yep.
And we had several judges of the Court of Appeal being sent home.
Yep.
Because there was a concerted effort by the Law Society of Kenya to submit complaints before the board. And then at the same time, as the recruitment of judges started then, lawyers also submitted their views, appraisals, and complaints. And it's on the basis of that that you're able to see the impact of representation of the Law Society in the Judicial Service Commission. So going forward, it is imperative on the part of the lawyers to ensure that they have a representative who understands what his role is in the Judicial Service Commission. Somebody who will be able to call out corruption in the judiciary. Somebody who will be able to ensure that many of the appointees who end up being judges and magistrates are from the legal fraternity, practitioners, people who have gone to court, people who have an understanding of the court processes.
Nelson, I'm not sure I understand your line of argument here. You started by saying that the composition of the Judicial Service Commission hinders the proper vetting or removal of judges who are found to be corrupt, who are thought to be corrupt or felt to be corrupt by the public.
Yes.
So we asked about the composition, and we talked about the imbalance between judges and non-judges in the panel. And I asked you, so do you want to shift that balance? And you said, no, you don't have a problem with it. So what exactly is your issue? Are you saying that complaints against judges should not be taken to the Judicial Service Commission, should go to a different entity?
No, Latif, and let me make this clear for the benefit of those who are listening and watching. We have a Judicial Service Commission. Its composition is provided for by the Constitution. But often we'll end up having individuals in that commission, either as an outcome of an election or an appointment, who do not understand their work.
Yes.
We had a Chief Justice by the name Dr. William Mutunga. He understood his work. When you took a complaint to the Judicial Service Commission, it will be processed speedily and a judge will be asked to account. We had an individual who held the office of the chair of the Judicial Service Commission by the name David Kenani Maraga. He understood his work.